And welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much. I am glad to be in our midst this morning. I'm really honored. My presentation this morning is titled Participation in River Guardianship, the medium of aquatic theater. However, before I begin the presentation, I would like to relate to two particular quotations. First, by Gareth Hardin, a well-known economist, in his article, The Tragedy of the Commons. And the second quotation is an American proverb. Now, in the first quotation, according to Gareth Hardin, the oceans of the world continue to suffer from the survival of the philosophy of the commons. Maritime nations still respond automatically to the shibboleth of the freedom of the seas. With this, they bring species upon species of fishes and whales closer to extinction. And the second quotation says, only when the last tree has been cut down, the last fish has been caught, and the last stream poisoned, will we realize we cannot eat money. Now, the above quotations fully capture the subject of our discussion this morning. I will talk to us about a very delicate issue. It is one of the most protractable problems of the 21st century, the issue of environmental degradation, a subject that is not actually new to us. This study captures how indigenous communities in the Niger Delta have responded to the depopulation of rivers in the region. I will first talk to us about what I mean by the Niger Delta by conceptualizing the term, and then articulate how people in the region connect to the rivers and examine the indigenous river guardianship framework that is peculiar to the Niger Delta people, where I come from. While I make special reference to the Urhobo people in the Niger Delta, I will also elucidate on the Benikamai Aquatic Festival Theater performance as a river guardianship strategy and agency for river. First, let me look at what I mean by Niger Delta. Right here we have on this map, at the right-hand side, we have the map of Nigeria, and at the larger section, on the larger section, we have the map of the Niger Delta with various states situated in the Niger Delta. Now, the Niger Delta refers to the geographical enclave into which the River Niger empties its waters. It refreshes itself by the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, which actually neighbors it further south of Nigeria. It is considered to be located within 9 coastal states: Ondo State, Edo State, Delta State, Bayelsa State, Imo Rivers, Abia, Akwa Ibom, and Cross River State. Interestingly, these states are all oil-producing states. The region is mightily rich in crude oil and natural gas. Unfortunately, it is one of the most marginalized and least developed regions in the world. The Human Rights Watch in 2004, for instance, states categorically that Nigeria's Niger Delta is home to the largest majority of women who are the poorest in the country without basic social amenities such as electricity, hospitals, schools, and potable water. This is even though its minerals drive the nation's economy. This fully captures the fact that the region is marginalized. Now, the exploration of oil in the region have actually displaced the women and children in the region because the major occupation of inhabitants in the Niger Delta before the advent or the coming of transnational oil company for oil exploration was fishing and, farming. Let me give us a clear pictorial depiction of what holds sway in the environment in the Niger Delta and how the rivers are being degraded by all of these transnational oil companies such as Shell British Petroleum, Chevron, Texaco, and a whole lot of other oil companies. Now, echoes of environmental depopulation in the Niger Delta. In the first pictorial depiction, we have a particular river right there, the gory state of a stream at Ukbeomi in Delta State, and the second picture fully captures the Santa Barbara River in Bayelsa State. And then we have Ogoni land. Ogoni, one of the rivers in Ogoni that has been degraded for decades. Scholars in the environmental humanities are actually very conversant with the Niger Delta because according to the United Nations, the Niger Delta is the most environmentally devastated region in the world. Now, I am an indigene of this region. I grew up in this region, and I have witnessed numerous cases of oil spillages in different communities. For example, in 1998, up to 1,000 inhabitants of Jesse land died from oil explosion as a result of oil spills by Shell British Petroleum. The most prominent of all of these crises, however, is the depopulation of streams by oil spills. With the continuous exploration of oil by transnational oil companies, cases of oil spills in the rivers are recorded on weekly basis, and this has led to the deprivation and displacement of fishermen of their sources of livelihood. Now, I have shown us some pictorial depictions. I will proceed to look at philosophical thoughts around rivers in the Niger Delta and how the people in the Niger Delta connect with the rivers, how the people in the Niger Delta see the river before the advent of oil exploration in the region, the relationship of people in the region, their kinship. They saw the rivers as their kin. They saw the interconnectedness, of themselves, their existence with the waters. At this point, I'll make special reference to the Yoruba people of the region. It is the culture of every indigene of the community, actually, to protect the environment. Let us look at the cultural matrix of my people, which is that of the Yoruba people in the Niger Delta, as a case study. The Yoruba people do not see the river only as the water that flows. They believe that the river is a constituent of the water, the creatures such as fishes, and the supernatural deities that reside in these rivers. There is the belief that houses, cars, and other social utilities abound under the water for the spirit beings the same way they do for man in the physical realm. Among the Yoruba people, for man to access the blessings and protection of these entities, actually, for one to access the blessings of these entities, sacrifices ought to be made to appease all of these entities. According to Onigu Otite, a prominent scholar in studies on the Niger Delta, he quotes, "There is the idea that every portion of the water, be it the lake, the pond, the river, sea, or ocean, constitutes an abode of mysterious powers. The larger a portion of mass of water is, the more and more powerful the powers that dwell in it. Every lake or portion of the water is thought to be under the control of a particular divinity, and when it pleases it, it will release fishes And if it is not pleased, it will lock all of these fishes up. Hence, fishermen operating in a particular lake usually establish a shrine by the water where the divine forces around could be invoked and worshipped. These are pictorial depictions of sacrifices being made to be given to the deities right in the water. We can see some soft drinks right here and food being given to the deities right in front of the river. Now, I will state categorically about my experience. I will be a bit autobiographic in this presentation. An experience that I had right in a stream in my community on my way to the farm, because I engage in subsistence farming. Right there, when I got there, right at the stream, about to board a canoe across the stream to my farm, I saw a woman right there with a newborn baby. And right there with some drinks, then I had a research. I asked, what was the meaning of this? And I was told that this woman had been, barren for years. And that same year, she came to the river to plead with the deity right in the river that if the deity gave her a baby, that she will bring this baby back to dedicate to the deity. Interestingly, that same year she got pregnant and she was delivered of a baby. And, this fully captures the supernatural forces that dwell, in all of these streams in the region. Now, the reason I am mentioning this is for us to have a clear understanding of how the people in the region connect to, the river, how the rivers in the Niger Delta serve as a panacea for some of the problems that people in the Niger Delta encounter. I will proceed to look at the form and structure of Benikamai Aquatic Theater. According to a 2018 report by the World Atlas, the Izon people, the Izon ethnic groups, make up to 10% of Nigeria's population, and it is also the fourth largest ethnic group in Nigeria. The Izon people live around the water, and interestingly, on the water as well. Now, in this ethnic group, when you get there, sometimes some of their houses are built right in the stream. For us to understand that, yes, these people see the stream as their abode, the same way other ethnic groups see the terrestrial domain as, their abode. In the heydays of oil violence in the region, the creeks served as home for militants who believed in the spiritual and protective potency of the water. The creeks served as a temporal and also a spiritual space where entanglements between Ijos and their enemies end up in the host, prevailing. In fact, the river is home for the Ijaw whenever they are in distress. This is also one of the reasons that indigenous people of Ijaw communities are well grounded in the art of swimming. Permits me to tell us that an Ijaw man has the capacity to stay inside of the water for an hour without any technological attachment or whatsoever. He goes into the water, you stay, you watch for an hour, he comes out of the water alive. For us to actually understand, that yes, the connection between the Ijaws and the river cannot be overemphasized. The Ijaws have often used the medium of theater festival theater to negotiate their physical environment. With the despoliation of the rivers, they have continued to engage in their annual festival known as the Benikamai Aquatic Festival as a medium to protect their rivers. How do they do this? You know, Benikamai Aquatic Theater takes place in, on, and around the water. The water serves as a performance space where various indigenous music, dances, incantations, and chants are engaged in. The Ijaws, like other ethnic groups in Nigeria, generally consider the shores as part of the river. The Benikamai performance begins in the shoreline. This is a clear pictorial depiction of where the festival begins. As we can see, two participants headlocked, you know, in a wrestling competition. This is how the festival begins. And then, gradually, there is a transition from the shoreline participation, because they are participating at the shore currently. There is a transition from the shoreline participation into, another stage, which is known as the fluid stage. At this point, focus leaves the shore, you know, of the river and focuses in the water, focuses on it. It is at this point that a narrative can be told with the medium of mimetic dramatization, dances, music, incantations, and chants. This is a clear example of the fluid stage. Performances taking this man right in the water, engaging in mimetic dramatization. It is imperative to note that the performance on the fluid stage, which I'm talking about now, must be good swimmers. The average Ijaw man is a good swimmer. It is the norm for the Ijaws to be good swimmers because at birth, between 2 and 3 months, there is a tradition they engage in. These babies are thrown in the water and left in the water for some minutes before they are taken out. It is a kind of ritual. So gradually, they make the babies, the children have a feel of, you know, the water. And gradually, as they grow, the growth process continues. One will realize that these children are gradually integrated into the fold of, you know, this swimming culture. This is almost not an issue of concern, since indigenous people of Ijaw origin are good swimmers. To them, the art of swimming is one that is mastered from childhood. Now, after the theater on the fluid arena that we can see right here, comes the performance on the floating stage. Now, this is performance on the floating stage. Now, they are right in the middle of the river. This is characterized with performance well balanced on or in a canoe. The number of participants or performers right in the canoe is determined by the size of the canoe. And then the size of the boat, like I have said, determines the number of performers. This level usually announces the crescendo of the performance. At this point, the paddlers of the canoe need to do so with care in order to push it with a tempo. And then the water and its inhabitants influences the structure of the performance as well. For instance, dance movements of the Ijaw people involves the movement of the body and the wriggling of the waist and the body and the tail of a fish. Let us look at how this festival translates into a river guardian strategy. Now, the entertainment context of the Benikamai Aquatic Theater is obvious, considering the amusement, the entertainment orientation of the African theater audience. However, Benekamai also possesses the indices of river guardianship. For instance, before the commencement of the festival, there is always a cleaning exercise of inside of the river, around and around of the river as well. This festival cannot be performed in a river that is soiled or polluted. So with this, with the fact that this festival is celebrated annually, the Nigerian government is and the transnational oil companies that are responsible for the depollution of the rivers are compelled to make sure they engage in various cleanup exercise of, the river. Now, in a homestead conversation with Yabrifa Esbra, an active participant and performer in the Benekamai Aquatic Theater performer, I got to know that sacrifices made around the river gives the indigenous oil-producing communities the sense that, yes, these waters, the water inhabits supernatural forces and also prevents them from degrading the rivers. It prevents them from, from activities that would constitute oil spillages right in the river. And then there is also the tree planting exercise, which has become an annual activity in Ijoland as well. Trees are planted for numerous reasons. One, it reduces the force of flooding and erosion and also produces oxygen for humans and animals. Also, animals such as monkeys find trees that are close to the river. They see some of these trees as their abode. Hence, this is also imperative in mitigating climate change. Planting of trees around the river is a way of centering and decolonizing, rivers as well. Now, I will conclude by looking at the semiotic, of costumes. Semiotic of costumes by costumes worn by the participants of the Benekamai Aquatic Theater performance. Now, let's look at these three pictures. We'll notice that all of these participants in the festival, we realize that they are right in white costumes, in exception of one of the participants who is in red. And then in the last picture, some of them are in red, just two are in red, while others are in white. Now, the white costume symbolizes the purity of the water deities and the water itself. It symbolizes that the water is spiritual and must be kept clean and pure at all times. This is a clear narrative on the need to keep, the rivers as clean and as pure as the clothes that, the costume that they've worn. It is also a representation of the need for a society devoid of ecological devastation and the depollution of rivers. So, you realize that the first two pictures above also reveal that the shrines are constructed on the bank of the rivers. Look at some of the, foods that are being given to the gods, given to the deities, placed in the bank of the river. It is actually a call to fend away attempts to desecrate the waters. Thank you.